Jerit Roser for the Topic Unit, NOLA.com out in Baton Rouge, here to break down some of our Baton Rouge area football power rankings heading into the fourth week of the high school football season, where we're about a third of the way through now the regular season. And really, this week not a lot has changed from last week's rankings. The big news is Central, the reigning 4-5A district champions, fall out of the top 10 for the first time this season. They're having some early issues, a big loss at Jesuit this past week, and they'll be looking to get right quickly. They'll have McKinley this week and some other big games looming large coming up. Zachary, a District 4-5A rival, climbs into the rankings for the first time at number 8. Again, that's the big change. Zachary hopping in, knocking Central out. Zachary played a close game against a Bird team that has looked consistently more and more impressive as the season has gone on. They got behind 17-0 to Bird in the season opener and have outscored opponents 118-15 since then, with two big wins after nearly pulling off a comeback against the Yellow Jackets. Zachary in there at number 8. At number 10, Woodlawn slides slightly down to that number 10 spot with a loss to Plaquemine. Woodlawn still having a nice start to the year at 2-1, but falls to number 10. Dutchtown, last week's number 10, is now number 9, despite a loss to a really, really strong Destrehan team. The Griffins went down to Destrehan and lost 20-10 this year. They're 1-2 after losing to a really strong Lutcher team that surprised a lot of folks at 3-0 so far. But Dutchtown last year lost at home to Destrehan this time, 45-14. Managed to springboard from that and a comeback the following week, or the 2 weeks later actually, against Rummel, and reached the Class 5A state quarterfinals. So Dutchtown coming in at number 9, as we mentioned. Zachary at number 8 this week, which has a big matchup this week at District 4-5A rival Scotlandville. Scotlandville having a nice season so far at 2-1. They bounced back from a 1-point loss to a strong East St. John team by routing Glen Oaks. Then up at number 6 is Sanamaw in that District 5-5A along with Dutchtown. They lose by 8 points to a nationally ranked Warren Easton team in the season opener, and have really handled business against LW Higgins and HL Bourgeois in the 2 weeks since then, scoring almost as many points as anyone in the area this season, and holding all 3 of those opponents to an average of about 12 fewer points per game than they've scored in their other matchups thus far. Getting into the top 5, Lutcher, that 3-0 team that beat Dutchtown in the season opener, as I mentioned, really surprising people with not just being strong, but how strong they've been to beat a Dutchtown, to beat a McDonough 35, and then most recently to beat a West Jefferson team. Last year, Lutcher lost all 3 of those games, got a forfeit from McDonough 35 after the fact. This year, they've gone out there and won all 3 of them and sit at number 5. Livonia at number 4, looking again like a potential favorite to get back to the Superdome in Class 3A. They've only played 2 games thus far, but they've handled business, and they've looked very similar to that team last year, despite a new coaching staff and some new faces in key places. Number 3, the team that knocked off Lutcher for the 6-4A district title last year, Plaquemine, is 3-0, looking really strong. They've beaten several notable opponents, as I mentioned, most recently Woodlawn. They've also beaten East Ascension and Bruley, both pretty handily to start out the season. And then at number 2, U High, which was number 1 throughout the season last year in these rankings, started this year at number 1. Hasn't been as dominant as they were at this point last year, but they've got 3 wins. They've come back against 2 pretty strong teams and managed to pull away late against a pretty strong Southern Lab team, all despite dealing with a lot of injuries, including quarterback Manny Miles, who's been out with a sprained ankle since that season opener. And you can't really fault them too much for taking care of business against good teams with those injuries. I think that bodes well for them down the stretch. But really the reason that last week they fell to number 2 was that Catholic of Baton Rouge has been about as dominant as maybe any team in the state outside of, say, Rummel, who they'll actually face this week. Catholic has averaged 46 points per game while allowing just 38 points total this season. I think if I just said 48 points, 46. They've scored 138, allowed just 38 in big-time wins against Parkview Baptist, against Mandeville, and against Denham Springs, all of which came on the road. So now the Bears come home, and as I mentioned, Santa Maria scoring a bunch of points. Catholic's the only team that's scored more points thus far in the Baton Rouge area than the Gators. Catholic comes home now for a home opener all the way in week 4 against a Rummel team fresh off knocking off Acadiana, the Class 5A champions last year. So the Division I champions coming to Baton Rouge to face Catholic in a matchup that we could maybe see down the road in the Division I playoffs. Certainly going to be one of the biggest matchups in the state this week, kind of seeing where folks fall. Lutcher and Santa Maria play, Scotlandville and Zachary play. And so we're going to really see after this week where a lot of these Baton Rouge schools fall. But for right now, that's the way it lines up.